Hello to all. So welcome to another week. This lesson is going to be for Sunday. That's going to be 12th of April. I hope you have understood what we learned in the last video. And I told you to send the homework. There were very few of the students who had sent me the homework, and that was really very disappointing. Anyhow, I'm not going to discuss that two questions at all unless you have to send me and get the corrections done. If it's wrong, yes, I will correct it for you. Else, of course, I'm not going to tell you the answer, because what happens when I give you the answers is that simply maybe some are just copying. So I have no idea. I have nothing to keep in track of who is doing the questions and who is not. So you have to send me the question solved. Only then I will tell them answer is correct or not. Okay, so today we'll be moving on to the next part of the lesson, where the graph will be given to you. You will have to write an inequality to represent the graph. Now, if you have drawn the graph and if you have done the questions and like for the previous video that was for Thursday, of course you'll find this more easier, because already we know how to draw the graph as well as how the shaded part, all these things we know. So keeping this in mind, let's see, if a graph is given, how do you write the inequality? But before I play the concerned video for you, I just want you to know that we all know how to find the y-intercept now. Whichever point the line is touching the y-axis is the y-intercept. So for example, in this graph, the y-intercept is 2, because the line is touching the axis at 2, the y-axis at 2. But how do you find the slope? Always when we are graphing the slope, we either go up or down first and then go to the right or left, right? Now here, if you see, from here, from the y-intercept, you take any point, any one point which is like touching or at this point here, see, like which we can get the axis, which we can get the coordinate. For example, now this coordinate you can say it as 3, 1. So what you do is, from this y-axis, right, from the y-axis, you first go to the right. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3. Okay, we are talking about this point. I'm concerned about only this point here. So from here to this point, how many do I have to move to the right? I will have to move to the right 3 times. And how many times do I have to come down? It's 1. So which means the slope for this equation, it's the slope for this graph is going to be -1/3. Why is it -1/3? See, from this point, okay, we are coming down 1, so that means a fall. That's a -1, because it's either rise over run, right? So the fall is 1, and then you will move 1, 2, 3 to reach this point. So as well, you can even take this point here. So from this point to this point, you will have 1, 2. So anyhow, it's a fall, it's a coming down. And then from here to here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So which means it's going to be 2/6. Now you will not leave it as 2/6. You need to simplify it. So if you simplify, you're going to get 1/3. So that's the same thing. You can either use any point here, which is like in an exact precise point on the graph, or you can see wherever it's touching also, you can take that point as well. That part will be more clear as we go on in the next lessons. So do watch this, and let's see whether we can do the questions or not.
All right, now let's try to, in some sense, work backwards. Suppose that someone gives us an image in the plane. Let's take a look at this one. Can we produce the algebraic linear inequality for which this is the solution for? Well, the answer is we sure can. This requires a couple of steps. The very first thing I would do is actually find the equation of the line. So let's find the equation of the line and then work our way to actually describing this region. Okay, so how do we find the equation of the line? Well, I have the y-intercept right here. That's at 1. Now again, this is how I do it. There are lots of ways that you can find equations for lines. I'm just going to show you how I think about it. So y equals something plus 1, because that's the y-intercept. Now I'm going to try to figure out the slope. So I want another point on this line. I'm going to pick this point right here. How do I get from here to here? I go up 2 and over 3. So that looks like this has a slope of 2 over 3. So this looks like it's 2 over 3x. And now I actually have produced the equation for the boundary line. What about the inequality at hand? First of all, I notice that the line is solid, which means that, in fact, I'm going to have either a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to. So that's cool. And, well, which way should I put it? Well, let's see. All I've got to do is pick a point and see if it's satisfied or not. So I'm going to pick 0, 0. 0, 0 is not in my range. You see, I'm looking for this. So 0, 0 has to not satisfy the inequality. So I put 0 here for y and 0 here for x, and I see 0 on this side and 1 on this side. So I see 0 on this side and 1 on this side. I don't want that to hold, which means what? This is smaller than this, so therefore I must want this to be larger. So I must have y is greater than or equal to 2/3 x plus 1. So that is the linear inequality that actually has this image as a solution. Let me just say again how I knew how to put the inequality. I just picked a point, in this case, a point that I don't want to satisfy. Check it out. If I put 0, 0 here, it doesn't satisfy it. 0 is not greater than or equal to 1. So therefore, it's the other side, and that's how I get it. Let's try another one. Really, really fast. I know. You're saying, you know what, I'm ready to tackle my own homework. But just give me a chance. I want to show off a little bit. First thing I notice here is this is a dotted line, which means that, in fact, this is going to be either a strictly greater than or strictly less than inequality. Okay, well, what is the equation of that line? Let's just figure that out. So the y-intercept I see is at -3. And what's the slope? Well, how do I go from here to here? Well, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, but then I have to go to the left, which is a negative direction for us, 1, 2, 3. So I see it's going to be 3 divided by -3, which is just -1, and so I see -x. So I have y equals -x minus 3. That's the boundary line. But of course, I've got to figure out how to put the inequality. And again, I'll just pick the origin. I love the origin, but the origin is not in the solution. So when I put in 0 and 0, this should not hold. Here I get 0, and this side I get -3. And so therefore, I want this to actually be smaller. So 0 is not smaller than -3, but all the points in here are. So y is strictly less than -x minus 3 is the inequality, the linear inequality that has this picture as a solution. One last one. And this one's not so bad, because that line is really easy to write down. That boundary line is just a horizontal line, so it has slope 0. It's just y equals the y-intercept, which is y equals 2. And how do I shade? Well, I'm going to pick 0, 0, but now 0, 0 is in the region, so I want this to hold for 0, 0. This better hold for 0, 0. Well, there's no x to plug in, but y is 0. If I put 0 in here, I want 0 to, well, be smaller than 2. So I must have this inequality. Y is less than or equal to 2. Anyway, you get a sense that, in fact, when you're looking at a linear inequality, what we're basically doing is chopping the plane in half and looking at either one side or the other side of the boundary line. We dash or solidify the boundary line depending upon whether we have a strict inequality or a less than or greater than or equal to. Fun. Have fun with the boundary lines in your life. I'll see you soon.
Okay, so I hope that part was more clear because 3 examples were done for you there. So let's start doing question number 10 from this from page number 364. So this was similar to the last example which he showed you. This is going to be write an inequality to represent each graph. So first what you do is write the equation in y-intercept form. That's going to be a very easy one. And after that, you decide by looking at the dotted line, whether the dotted line, by looking at the line. Now, if it's a dotted line, it has to be either greater or lesser. If it's a solid line like this, it has to be greater or equal to or less or equal to. Now, by looking at this one, we can say that it's going to be a less or a greater one. So first, let's start writing the equation. So y is equal to, now this is a horizontal line, which means the y-intercept is going to be 3. right? So this will be true if it was just a equation, but as this is an inequality, you have to say whether it is greater or lesser. Now, as I told you before, anything below the line is going to be a lesser one, so that's going to be y is less than 3. Anything which is above the line is going to be greater. Anything which is below the line is going to be a lesser one. Or as they showed in the example, you can take 0 and 0. So if you take 0, right? So 0 is of course going to be less than 3. So you replace the equal sign with a lesser sign. Okay, now moving to question number 11. Let's see how we can solve question number 11. uh, First, of course, you have to write down the formula, which is y is equal to, okay, that's going to be mx plus b. This is going to be our formula. This is the y-intercept form. Look at the y-intercept. How much is the y-intercept? That's going to be 5. So let me break this apart and then let me show you how you have to write it. So the value of b is going to be 5. Okay, now what is the slope going to be? We have to find the slope. So let me show you how to find the slope. Okay, see here, we come down from this point till this point. You can reach this point. So it's in fact, again, it's coming down, right? So let's see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be a fall of 5. So which means it's negative 5, right? And then go to the left. So that's going to be again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, the moving to the left is also going to be a 5 for you. Now, how are you moving to the left means, again, that's also going to be a negative 1. So that's going to be negative 5 over 5. Now, as usual, you know, negative and negative gets cancelled. 5 divided by 5 will give you 1. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 equals 1. Now can we write the formula properly? Y is equal to 1x. We don't usually write 1x, so we leave the x like that, plus 5. Now this is going to be your y-intercept formula, but because we need to write an inequality, now first see the line. It is a solid line. Solid line means it needs to be greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So here, as I have told you, anything above the line is going to be greater. So that's going to be greater than or equal to. I cannot use that symbol, so I'm using the words you don't use. You have to use the small dash, small line there, or equal to x plus 5. So that's going to be your equation for this question. So I will quickly explain what we have done here. All what you need to do is break up this. Y is equal to mx plus b. Write down the value of b. You can see the b is the intercept. Y intercept is 5 because the line is touching y axis at 5, and m, that is the slope. We need to count from this point till this point. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's coming down. So that's a minus 5. Again, we have to go to the left. Go to the left is also a minus 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So minus 5 over minus 5 will give us 1. That means the slope is going to be 1. So let's write it in the equation. Y is equal to 1x. We don't write the 1. So x plus 5. So because it is, we have to say it, we have to replace the equal sign with equal to, or greater or equal to, less or equal to. So look at this line. It is a solid line, which means it's going to be greater or equal to. Now how do you know it's greater? Because anything above the line is going to be greater. Anything below the line is going to be lesser. So this is all, the shaded part is all the greater. So y is greater or equal to x plus 5. Okay, now let's move to question number 20. I'll give you 2 minutes. Write the inequality and then let's discuss the answer is correct or not. Okay, are you done with question number 20? Let's see whether the answer you got and the answer which we are going to solve is the same or not. So the equation is going to be y is equal to mx plus b. Now the b, where is b? Okay, the y-intercept is, where is the line touching y? It's touching at -1. So your y-intercept is going to be -1. As you can see, this is the y-axis and the line is touching here, which is -1. And let's find the slope now. Now what I said in the previous example, from here, okay, from this point, you count until this point. How many you have to come down or go up? Now, if you're doing that from this point here, you are coming down, which means it's a -1, right? So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be -4 because it's a fall. You are coming down. And then again, you have to go to the left, which means again it's a -1. So we came down 4. Let's see from here, how much do we need to move to reach to this point here? So we have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So your slope is going to be -4 over -6. Now, you know, -4, negative, that both negatives will get cancelled, right? So also you cannot leave the slope to be in this form. You have to simplify it. Your slope should always be in a simplified form. So you will simplify this with 2. So that will give you 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, which means your slope is 2 over 3. Now, the intercept is -1, right? And the slope is 2 over 3. So let's write it in the formula. Y is equal to 2 over 3x minus 1. Minus 1 because the y-intercept was -1. Now, let me write it clearly. I just hope I can write it. Okay, so 2 over 3x minus 1. This is going to be your equation. But we have to write an inequality. First decide, is it going to be only the symbol or the equal sign also? Now this is a dotted line, which means it is strictly with only the symbol, no equal sign. If it's an equal sign, that small line down, it will be a solid line. So let's write it. So is the shaded part above or below the line? It is above, which means it's going to be greater to x minus 1. I'll just write the 3 down. So your inequality is going to be y is greater than 2 over 3x minus 1. This is how you have to be finding the inequalities. So 2 minutes more, quickly do this question and then let's discuss the answers. Okay, so I hope you have found the answer. So first let's write the y-intercept, which is b. So the y-intercept here is 3 because it's touching, the line is touching the y-axis at 3. And then the slope, okay, so let's check from here till here. How many units do we need to move? You can even take the opposite way. You can go up and then come down, or you can come down and then go to the right. It's up to you, however you want to do it. Anyhow, the slope is going to be the same. So let me, from here, from this point, let me come up till here and check how many squares do we, I mean, what is the slope. So to reach this point, let me move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that means the run is 5, which is supposed to be down, and the rise is -1. So the rise is -1 because it's a fall, and the run was, we were going to the right, so that's not going to be a negative one because from here we are going to the right. If we go to the left, it's going to be a negative, but because we went to the right, it's going to be a positive one, and then there's a fall here, which means the slope is -1/5. So let's write it back in the equation. Y is equal to -1/5, and the slope, the y-intercept was plus +3. So it is going to be 5. Now we have to write the inequality, right? So first, before writing the inequality, decide whether it's going to be with the equal sign or without the equal sign. Now, because this is a solid line, of course, it's going to be with the equal sign, right? Now, is the shaded part above the line or below the line? It is, of course, below the line. So, which means it's going to be y is less than or equal to, please girls do put the minus equal sign there, the small line, because I cannot do it. Okay, so +3. So I will write the, I can only do this part here. Don't get confused that the negative belongs to the 5. No, the negative, that's a small line which should be in place under the equal sign, lesser sign. So this is going to be your inequality. Y is less than or equal to -1/5 plus 3. And I forgot this here, x. You have to write the x here. Okay, so I hope this lesson was clear for you. This part of the lesson was clear for you. Now, if you have any doubts, of course, you are most welcome to clear them. Where I don't get much, I don't get anyone asking any doubts from me, except those few girls who keep watching the videos and then they clear the doubts. So this was the end of this lesson. So you will have homework, the consent page, chapter 5, lesson 5 homework you will need to be doing. So in tomorrow's video, we'll discuss those answers. So until do keep doing the homework. So until I meet you all in tomorrow's video, take care of yourselves and stay safe.